have got?
We haven't got Bailey either.
So that will work out okay then, innit? Yes. Okay then, members. I start the meeting. So welcome to the meeting, the first one of the new, or the last year of this ministerial year for this administration. So can we have apologies for absence?
Don't have any.
No absence. Okay. Thank you ever so much for that. We are waiting for Dave White and for Mr. Bailey to come in. So it works out okay. One each is not here, so that's okay at the moment. So item number 2, declaration of interest. Members, anybody got any declaration of interests?
No.
No. I haven't. Item 3, chairman's announcement. I haven't got any announcements to make. So we're going to item number 4 on page 3, the minutes of the last pension board meeting held on the 25th of January 2021. So we'll read page 3, page 4, page 5, and page 6. Are members happy with all the minutes of that meeting, please?
Yes. Happy to move, Chairman.
Okay. Okay, thank you ever so much for that. That's brilliant. So we're going to item number 7, report on the scheme data for firefighters' pension schemes. Alison?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I'm going to hand over to Keith Clare in a second, but just a couple of observations from me on this one. So this is scheme data across the range of fire pensions. Appendix A will be of particular interest, and I think the observations that, from my perspective, looking at the 92 scheme, since 2019, the number of protected members has reduced. So that means there are now more members in the 2015 scheme, which is the reformed scheme that was introduced as part of the 2011 review of public sector pensions, and will form part of further debates today, no doubt. So, yeah, Ian, any observations from your end?
From this end, I've obviously read the paper. Yeah, I'm happy with the chart that you've just talked about, Appendix A, that clarifies things. There were various things in the report that I'd sort of liked some time to clarify, but I'm happy to go with this morning because the audio isn't very good either at this end in the backwoods. So, yeah, I'm happy with, Chairman.
Ian, do you want to comment?
Yeah, that's all I was going to add, Chair, in here. Obviously, the section 2 in the report does set out a lot of the detail in terms of the various complexities and variations, I suppose, in terms of the scheme. So I understand if members at a future point want some kind of training or awareness around some of that, and perhaps we can go away and have a think about that as part of the ongoing training requirements. As Alison mentioned, 2.6 sets out the appendice for the scheme data and breaks it down into those various scheme categories, which members may be interested in. 2.10, as Alison mentioned, I think there's probably going to be some further discussion on that today as part of those sort of legal remedies. Some of the key statistics just to pick up on, really, I think, as Alison has mentioned, 2.11 sets out the movement there in terms of our retirement numbers during the year. Yeah. So from April 20 to March, 62 retirements and a number of ill healths there. So for members to be aware, really. And again, 2.12 then just sets out the movement in membership there into total numbers retired at the moment now has increased slightly from last year's position. So there's currently 1,184 as at the reporting date. Obviously, it's a bit of a moving feast in terms of the numbers. Again, as Alison has alluded to in terms of the conclusion there on section 4, that the largest proportion of members is now actually within the 2015 scheme as expected, really. So the numbers decrease over time in the 92 scheme. So I don't think there was anything further I was going to add, Chair, on it, other than, these are the statistics, and it's right that members obviously receive these statistics around membership numbers in the various schemes. And later on in the year, we'll also be providing board with, the data quality scores that board would be familiar with, that we provide to the pension regulator. So that ties in nicely with this data requirement and board's oversight of your of your pensioners. So I'm happy to pause there, Chair, and take any questions.
No, I'm happy with that. Thank you, Ian, for that. Anybody got any questions?
Well, I haven't got any questions, Shem. I found it very useful reading through, but then I'm thrown by such terms as the point where the double accrual under the 1992 scheme sort of makes me think, and I have to think hard. So, yes, at some time it would be interesting, useful to me to go through this, just looking at various little things. But I think, no, I'm happy with the report, and certainly the appendix is very good. Number 8, that's very nice and simple for me. I've got one question picked up by Welsh Government, so I'd answered my own question there. Okay. On point 2.10, I just circled one thing there, please. A circle around the grounds of age, race, and equal pay. I didn't see the logic of race in there. Age, equal pay, because we're equal opportunities, and that was one I had a query by. Other things I've solved myself. So that was under 210, please, Chairman. The outcome was a ruling that stated the government had discriminated against the two groups on the grounds of age, race, and equal pay. Well, the discrimination wasn't. It was age and equal pay. In my mind, anyway. So that was 2.10. So, any real thing left with me.
Quite right there, yes.
Yeah, I think that's something I can check back on in terms of the actual terminology used there, Chair, in terms of I haven't got the ruling things in front of me here at the moment, but certainly I can clarify that for board in terms of the precise wording that was used.
Do you want me to come in on the race one?
Ian, Rich, yeah?
Yeah, so, Councillor Smith, I think in terms of race, the reason race was brought was because most of the people, or the vast majority that were affected, were from underrepresented groups. So it's a form of indirect discrimination. So when you look at the scheme membership as a whole, those that were all tapered and protected tended to be white males because of the recruitment of the fire service 30 years ago. Whereas some of those that were moved across without any protection, there'd been a higher ratio of female and underrepresented groups in that. So thereby it forms a type of indirect discrimination.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, I can go with that. Thank you very much. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the question. There's the Appendix A with regard to the scheme data, and then in 2.12 it talks about the retired members in receipt of pension, which is 1,184. Is Appendix A the unretired people in the scheme, or what? How do the figures relate? Thank you.
Yeah. In terms of the actual table itself, there's total members of the 2015 scheme identified there in the column. Oh, there aren't any columns on there, sorry, my apologies. But there in terms of a track of April 19, so there's 1,196, 1,226, 1,097. But yes, the ones, those that are identified on the on the 4.1 there, in terms of the largest proportion of numbers in the scheme, 1197 are identified there. you're on about, let me have just check now, the total numbers of retired. So that's retirees, that is, in terms of pensioners. So they're actually in retirement there, rather than active members of the scheme,
So they're not
councillor. So
included
you're
in,
right.
so
They're
they're
not.
not
They're
included
not.
in Appendix
No,
A.
they're
Yeah.
not They're not active members. They are actually receiving their pension now. So
Oh,
you're
right. Okay.
correct.
So,
They are not in the scheme.
yeah. So basically, you've got 1,184 that are pensioners and getting money from the scheme, and then you've got
Correct.
1,197 who are unretired but will be eventually in receipt of pensions.
Correct. Active members. Yeah, they're active members of the scheme. So they're currently contributing to the scheme.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, everybody happy with that? Yep.
Yep. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Ian, for that. Okay, so we go on to item number 6 on page 15.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this paper is in relation to our terms of reference for the local pension board. We agreed last year that we would bring the terms of reference back on an annual basis for a review by this group. As you would expect, the current terms of reference follow a very standard format and cover off items such as quorum, membership, roles, skills and knowledge, and decision making. This is the version that's in our members' handbook. We just one point to make. Talking about quorum, Sally Chapman has been looking at quorum across each of our committees and has committed to undertake a piece of work around that for all of the committees. So that may change in the future, but not as yet. So I guess any observations, comments for this annual review of our terms of reference? No, nothing from it.
No, I'm happy. I do find it strange, Ben, that if one board member is not here from the representative, or from the union's not here, that they got to drop out. I think that really needs to be looked at, because that could really sway the meeting sometimes. So I think that definitely needs to be looked at.
Okay. Yeah. We'll do that.
100%. So.
Be a very small meeting.
Pardon, Val?
I said it'd be a very small meeting, that one.
Yes.
There's a reference to, obviously, the co-opted members, and I had scribbled against this under the attendance one. Co-opted persons were not members of the board, and I'd got a question alongside votes. Now, I think I clarified in my mind later on that co-opted members, co-opted persons who are not members of the board don't have a right to vote. I think I cleared that in my mind later on. Am I right?
We haven't got any co-opted members, have we?
No.
We haven't got any co-opted members.
No, we haven't. But in the event of us having.
Oh, right. Yeah, they wouldn't have a vote. Yes.
Right. And could I also ask, at one meeting, there was an asking for volunteers to be trained up from the fire authority so that you've got substitutes. I just couldn't remember. Did you get any volunteers? Or did we get any volunteers?
We didn't get any volunteers, but Alice and I have been in discussions, and we're going to ask one or two people would they like to join us, not on the board, but to have training. So that's a bit of work Alison and I have got to do at the moment. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to nitpick? On page 7, number 8, knowledge and skills. It's only the omission of an in. The law in relation to pensions, and it's at the top of the page and it just hits you. Law in relation to pensions and any other matters. I don't know, just want a little in inserting there.
Oh, good spot, Val. Yeah.
No. And I tell you what, do you want another one, Alison? The tail end of the tail end of number 7.7. It just says there are selflessness, integrity, blah, blah, blah. Would you like to have these are selflessness? An S instead of an R. I'm going to sleep then.
What do you think about for breakfast this morning, Val? Weetabix, is it? Yeah.
It's got to prove I do some homework sometime, dear.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Anybody else got questions? Anybody else got questions? Oh, Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was looking at page 7. It says there will be 3 under 9. There will be 3 local pension board meetings per year, with the option to call more as required. I noticed in the next report on the service agreement that there's only a requirement to attend 3 meetings, and I just wondered about extra optional meetings, which doesn't seem to be included within the service agreement for the next report. I'm just pointing that out for the next report. In terms of page 9, under 18 definitions, it says chair refers to the duties to be performed or authorised or authorities exercised by the chair, and I think it will be helpful to put, and in the chair's absence, the vice chair, just to clarify that the vice chair can take over the role in the absence of the chair.
I think that normal happens in all meetings, doesn't it? Yes.
Well, I know it's taken as read, but if you're going to define what the chair means, you might as well allow for a vice chair to take over. It's up to you whether you include it, but I would have thought that it would be helpful too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
So is everybody happy with that item now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We want to 29 on number 7 on page 29.
So before we start on this item, I'm just conscious that we've got Ian Trailer on the call as well, and I just wanted to check with members if they're happy for him to stay on the call, because obviously the service level agreement is about our relationship as a fire rescue service with our administrator. And Ian represents our administrator. So is everyone happy for Ian to stay on the call?
Yeah. Yes, I think so, because if you've got questions, we can nab him straight away. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, everybody's in agreement with that, yes.
Okay, so thank you for that. So by way of an introduction, and perhaps I'll just ask Ian if there's anything he wants to add in a sec. So this is the SLA that's been in place since October 2019. So it's been in place for about 18 months now. We agreed that we would bring this back to committee periodically for a review. I haven't proposed any changes because, in fact, I think it's working really well. And I think my observation on certainly some of the time frames in this SLA are what I would probably have described as quite ambitious, but they're very good turnaround times in terms of making payments for lump sums, etc. So I think from my perspective as a customer, the SLA as currently drafted works. But again, welcome any observations, comments or reflections. And perhaps, Ian, if there's anything you wanted to add at this point. I think from my perspective, you know, the relationship that we've got is really professional, and the service we're getting from RCT is really quite excellent. So just anything from you, Ian?
I'm happy for him to stay because. Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, go on then, Val, yes.
Yeah, on I don't know, on page 40, pensioner payroll services, and you know, can I comment, Chairman? before we had this service level agreement in front of us, we were not so well informed. I think this is an excellent document. We really know what the agreement is, what the responsibilities are. So, yeah, congratulations and thank you. Point 3 on the pensioner payroll services 40 sounds a bit morbid, but it just made me, I was interested to know. You pay pensioners each month at the due date, and this is in advance, which is fine, of the calendar month. That's great. In the sad situation that somebody fell off their perch the following day, what happens about the pension? Does one seek to reclaim any monies, or do we just let it lie for that month? There's a morbid one.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Yeah, there will be times where we have to reclaim funds back. It depends in terms of the circumstances there, and potentially the value of any overpayment and the background behind that. That's something we'd work closely with South Wales Fire and have that discussion in terms of
Right.
whether we'd claim that back. But under normal circumstances, yes, we would look to refund from any further funds that are owed to the estate, because there might be certain circumstances where there are funds still owed anyway, so there'll just be an adjustment made within those circumstances. And again, whether there's a widow's or dependents pension that then comes into payment and things like that. So there are adjustments that we have to make, and unfortunately that is that's the nature of this type of service, and we are sensitive with our correspondence and our discussions, I guess, with family members during those difficult times.
You could use the term discretion, because I welcome the payment in advance. I think that's good, but it was just, thank you very much for the explanation. And also, looking at your tables when you anticipate completing these things, I think the time schedule is very good, and I congratulate you on your job. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Anybody else? Go on.
Chair, I was just going to add the point, and picking up on what Alison said there. We've got a long-standing relationship with the fire service, and I totally agree that certainly in recent years, I think that's only grown from strength to strength in terms of the processes and good governance that the fire service and in partnership with ourselves are putting in place. So just picking up on that point, really, that yes, hopefully it is working. For the feedback I'm getting here is that it is working for the fire service, and it's clearly working for ourselves as well, which is, as I keep on saying, is a very, very complex scheme with all the changes and requirements of the schemes.
Very much so.
Thank you.
Any questions, Councillor Brown?
Yes.
Councillor Brown, yeah?
Yeah, sorry, was Councillor Smith carrying on?
No, carry on.
Oh, right, okay, thank you, Chair. I was looking at page 36 at the top, which says page 4 at the bottom, and it says representatives of RC pension administrators attend the LPB meetings held 3 times per year to update the members of the board on, and then it goes through the various bullet points. I just wondered, in terms of the service of the LPB. I mean, obviously it is normally 3 times a year, but because there is this option to have further meetings, and I presume there must be a particular. If you have a further meeting, I presume there must be a particular issue. So I just wondered whether or not the service agreement should include the possibility of possibly more than 3 meetings if there was an optional one. I mean, it's up to you, but that's the difference. I think it's a good agreement, but I think that's the difference between the terms of reference of the LPB and this service agreement. Just to comment on the difference and whether or not you want to put in some extra optional attendance or not.
Shall I comment? Ian may have a view as well. So, in my experience of being involved in this committee, we have pretty much had 3 meetings a year. So that would be the norm in terms of expectation. I guess the only other time we got together as an extraordinary meeting was when we talked about the McLeod judgment, but that was a 1 in a 20-year discussion, I think. So, yeah, take on board your point, Councillor Brown. I just wonder, because this is about the SLA with RCT, whether Ian's got a view in terms of RCT's commitment and requirements, should we need it for further meeting. Would it need to be in the SLA, I suppose, Ian, or would you, consider and adjust as and when?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, Alison, yeah, I think to do a further meeting, it wouldn't be an issue from an RCT perspective. I think that 3 times per year is about the norm that's set there for local pension boards to meet. But yeah, I think there's always an understanding whether it'll be a separate training event or a further urgent meeting required. Then RCT would clearly support that. It's entirely up to yourselves whether you want that referenced or not. But there's certainly a commitment there from RCT to support you in that.
I think I've been chairing this pension board now for 8 years. I think so. And we've only stuck to the 3 meetings. So yeah, we get other meetings to do pensions, but not a pension board. That I think that is the difference of it. This is pension board meeting, but we do get meetings otherwise, which is not in this SSLA today. So okay, does that clarify it for you, Mr. Brown?
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Chairman, can I ask a question, please? Across the screen just went a message, unstable. Well, that suits me fine. Me to a T. If I suddenly disappear, I'm unstable, all right? Can I ask Ian a question, please? And it's not related to this agreement now, just for my interest on pensions generally. Because you're a knowledgeable gentleman, sir. So there's a mention in the report of transfers in. Okay, so people can bring their pensions in. And something I don't know, life in general, is there any legal requirement for firms, not the Fire Authority or anything like this, any legal requirement for somebody moving from one job to another to require their pension go with them? Or are they tied? I don't know anything about this. Is that so, Ian? Or are other firms?
Yeah. Councillor Smith, it's down to individual's choice. I think the regulations with all the schemes is down to individual choice, really, in terms of people transferring from different roles, take a change in career path. And you can defer and hold your benefit within that pension scheme, or you can look to have it transferred into your new scheme, and there'll be options there around what that buys you in your new scheme. And there are advantages of doing it, and there's an advantage of transferring, and there's advantages to deferring and keeping, depending on what pay you were on at that particular time, what the type of pension scheme you were in. So there's a lot to consider, but it's all down to personal choice and for that individual to decide themselves.
So if I am employed by Joe Bloggs and Company, and I decide to move to South Wales Fire Authority, and Joe Bloggs and Company cannot say to me, no, you can't take your pension. We will retain it here in our scheme. Legally, Joe
You know,
Bloggs have got to let me take my pension.
Into an official scheme. That's the only thing with transfers, and we have people that transfer out of schemes, and there is an obligation there because there's a lot of fraud around lately, particularly around pension schemes. So you have to be careful in terms of what you are transferring out of and to, really. So, but no, they can't insist that you can't transfer. It's all down to personal choice.
So they have
It'd
got
be for
to
the
let me,
individual to decide.
and
Yeah.
that cannot, because awareness of many of sort of situations where firms have gone bust and pensioners have been left stranded. And you think, well, yeah, thank you. You've answered my question. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
So another question. The recommendations for this one, which I will read out, is members that take a review of the service level agreement, Target Report, Appendix 1, and the service level agreement formally review again in 2022, the third anniversary mentioned. So that's the recommendations. Everybody happy with that? Yeah? Yeah?
Yes, I have to approve.
Okay, thank you so much. So we go to the next item, which is number 8 on page 55.
Thank you, Chair. So I will hand over to Ian Trailer in a second to give us some information on this, but just to say that this report highlights the latest set of KPIs. There are a couple that I noticed in the appendix, and perhaps Ian you can expand on. So certainly around where payments have been made to active members within 5 days, and there was around transfers in, which were 80 and 88%. So just any comments on those, Ian? Though that's in the actual year-to-date column highlighted in yellow. Other than that, everything else is at 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Alison, and thank you, the Chair. Yeah, this is the standard report that members will be familiar with now in terms of setting out the service standards that we've agreed as per SLA, and we try obviously to achieve the service standards. Last year, I think it's fair to say, has been a challenging year for us all in terms of living our lives and service delivery itself. All the pension service are currently working from home and have been working from home since March of last year. In terms of our service standards, I think certainly from an annual perspective, and this shows the annual performance in that yellow target there. It is pleasing to note some of that we have certainly met the standards mostly across the board. You're right, Alison, in terms of, I guess, flagging their scope for improvement in terms of some of the service standards, and they are ambitious and challenging. And when we go through our regular process, hopefully there are reasons, and those are challenged at board at the time, why we didn't meet those expectations, and for the most, it is down to a complexity of a few cases that obviously draws that percentage down, because it does take us a little bit longer to process those cases. It's right that we do the due diligence on them because of the complexity, and we do the due diligence on all cases, but certainly in terms of the more complex ones that perhaps have to be cited by a number of officers just to make sure that we are applying the scheme and its variations appropriately. but I'm not here to make excuses. There is certainly scope for improvement, but hopefully, from an overall perspective, hopefully members will be pleased with the performance for the year, and hopefully we can move on from that now during this coming period, and as I said, improve on our activity for this year. So there was nothing else I was going to add really to the performance side of things. I'm happy to pause and take any questions from members on the actual Appendix 1, the performance side.
So I'd say, if everything was perfect, we wouldn't have, wouldn't it? You know, but, wouldn't it? Yes, you know. And
it's been a challenging year, Chair. It's been a
phenomenal challenge, yes. And that's what I mean. You know, this is we've nothing like this ever before, and I appreciate all the staff working from home. Well, I wouldn't want to do what they do from home. You know, it must be, the electric bills must be phenomenal. That's all I can say. But no, I appreciate there are differences and whatever, but you know, we've had an explanation, but unprecedented times, and we as a board have got to recognise that as well. You know.
Thank you, Chair.
Any questions?
Just to pick.
Sorry, one in, yeah.
I was just going to pick up quickly on Appendix 2 and then perhaps take the questions. In terms of our member self-serve statistics, they're the latest statistics. As I've mentioned at previous boards, it's really pleasing. There is such a high take-up, certainly on Scheme 90, of members using the member scheme, member self-service functionality. So that's always pleasing to note. In terms of the scheme complaints, there's no formal complaints to report to this board. Some of the key activities that the team is working on at the moment is in relation to the year-end activity. So that's planning now for the annual benefit statements that will be published by the statutory deadline of the 31st of August. And then picking up on one of the key ones, which I'm sure Alison is going to address later on, is relation of working closely with South Wales Fire, our software provider, across Wales, on the MacLeod remedies. It's obviously an issue for us logistically to put right once we know, I guess, what we are putting right. And as I said, Alison will pick up on that. The other thing I was just going to add, and it does tie in nicely with the service standards, is whilst everybody, all the pension team have been working from home, we've spent a high proportion of June bringing officers back into work and building up their staff development. Some of those aspects that are much more difficult to do when people are working from home. So a number of the team have been in throughout June, undertaking various training and development activity. And I'm pleased to report as well that the service is continuing to support the council's apprenticeship and graduate scheme this year. So again, we will be appointing to the service and building up our resources, our pension resources and our resilience to be able to provide this service to South Wales Fire and the local government pension scheme, obviously, that we manage. And hopefully that will put us in certainly some good grounds to tackle these challenges that are just round the corner, particularly the remedies issue that we know is on its way. That's all from me, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Nope.
Yeah, can I have a go, Chairman?
Yes.
Please. The challenges that are coming to sort out the cloud remedy requirements, it's going to involve a lot of extra work on the current staff or wherever. Now, in our reports, we accept that there is additional expense for the fire service as well. Who actually picks this up? How do we determine where the cost lies? You're going to have a lot of extra work down in Rhondda and Taff. We benefit from. How do we determine the costs to which party, Chairman?
That's a very good
Cost.
question.
I can add from South Wales Fire and Rescue perspective. We are shifting our pensions lead into a role that will focus on the remedy. So within our overall financial envelope, we will move Kim across, and she will work directly with Ian and his team on the immediate detriment aspects, which I'll share with you in a bit. But for the next 2 years, that will be her focus. I know, Ian, you may want to comment as well, because we talked about certainly the immediate detriment phase. There will be some manual calculations that RCT will have to supply, but we'll work in a hands-off arrangement. So we will do some calcs, and then we'll share with Ian's team. So, Ian, I don't know if you want to comment on that bit as well.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith. I think is certainly a very valid question, and as Alison mentioned, is a discussion that we have had, because there will inevitably be additional cost to implementing this requirement. Our software suppliers, when they do come up with a solution in terms of automating some of these changes, will no doubt pass on additional costs, which again, RCT will have to pass that cost on to South Wales Fire. And again, I think we're going to have to work, and as Alison mentioned, we've had a number of discussions we have regular discussions on this issue now, and is something we're going to have to monitor in terms of potential additional cost that RCT might have to pass to Fire with regards to the implementation. It's still early days, but clearly we have to work through the solutions first and see where that leads us in terms of additionality. But as a result of the remedies, there's clearly going to be additional cost retrospectively putting things right.
Yeah. No, it's just suddenly you think, how do you apportion these costs? Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you. We have a problem.
Okay, so everybody's happy with that?
Yep.
Okay, Doug. Yeah, sorry. Oh, right, Councillor Brown, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think overall, if you look at Appendix 1, sorry, can you hear me? Overall, if you look at Appendix 1 of the report, the KPIs are very good, because obviously overall, we're getting sort of 100% on quite a lot of them. There is sort of one column, which is the percentage retirements from active membership process within 5 days. Between June and August, that there are lower figures than normal, and a very low figure in February. Now, it may be that the percentages are only very low numbers, but it will be useful to know, sort of what the percentages are made up when it dips, say, below 50%, and how long is it if they're not processed within 5 days, the one that don't meet the target? Do we have sort of an explanation of how long it has actually taken? So I think it could be that there are only 1 or 2 cases and the percentage distorts it. And I just wondered whether or not we could have either the numbers involved, so that in a percentage. I mean, if there's only 2 cases, and one meets the target, then it distorts the percentage figures. But because we haven't got the numbers in the column by the side of that, we can't actually tell that. So it was just a question on that. And the second question I've got, Chair, is it mentions member self-service statistics. Now, is there sort of some sort of online way of accessing the pension and the benefits? Is that what it means? I'm not quite sure. So if I could have an answer to that, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Brown. And I guess a valid point in terms of the year-end statistics. Obviously, these statistics we bring to board at every cycle, and hopefully then when it comes, we within that cycle, on that very last column, we do say how many cases were completed on time, and I give some narrative then. I guess it's because we're looking at the whole year now, and then we're looking back to a period that happened back last year in June. Hopefully, I would like to think that I provided board with commentary at a previous board relating to those statistics. But I appreciate when you're looking at a whole year, it may be helpful to show particularly those areas where they are lower than anticipated, what the numbers were involved, because you're right. I would have thought, I haven't got the statistics here in front of me now, but I would have thought at the time that we would have been dealing with extremely low numbers, and that had the impact on that percentage. But I suppose it's then that I give them the update in terms of, well, if it was 5 days, two went over target. Were we talking 10 days? Were we talking 15 days? I think that's probably the clarity that you're talking about there. And that's something that, I can take into the next reporting cycle for board, if they feel that is helpful in terms of providing that narrative. Member self-service, yes, is automated. It's an automated access, secured access into the pension system itself. So scheme members can securely log in and look at their scheme details, advise us if they believe something is wrong in terms of the service or the pay that's being recorded and provided by South Wales Fire into the system. So that gives that opportunity. And the annual benefit statements are posted on there as well. So scheme members can see retrospectively as well what all their statements are. They're all held in a secure environment. In terms of that, and something we're developing around that as well is an ability for members to post information as well if we're requesting certain information or we're providing. It is a secure portal that we can have that communication with the scheme member in the security of knowing that it's all, as I said, secured down. I mentioned, fraud earlier, and it's something that we must all be vigilant and aware of, particularly around emails and things like that. So this solution provides a secure portal for our fire service members to access.
But the self-service is not just it's for all, because I get a pension from RCT and I got my own, which I got my own portal with RCT Council.
Yeah,
yes.
That's correct, Chair. We do offer this for the LGBS scheme as well, and it's certainly the way forward in terms of digitalising communication between us and the membership.
Yeah, I thought all local authorities knew about it. Yeah. Right, okay, thank you ever so much. So that is that item. On item 10, item 9, sorry, it's my mistake. Item 9, On 63.
Yeah.
Alison, right, this is the one, yeah?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is internal dispute resolution procedures. There's two aspects to this report. The first one is that Welsh Government issued on the 10th of June this year an update to the IDRP procedure. Essentially, that was born out of a scheme advisory board for Wales discussion around in the pensions regulations, there is no requirement to have a two-stage IDRP process. However, the Welsh FRSs currently all have a two-stage IDRP process, and the discussion was, did we want to keep that two-stage process or move to something else? It was unanimously agreed that we would retain the two-stage process because it worked well for us, and this update confirms that. So I wanted to share that with members. The second aspect is something that we started recently, which is to share the outputs of the IDRP panel discussions. And the reason for doing this, I think, from my perspective, was that we could have a look at what the disputes were, so what's coming down the tracks at us, and what the decisions, what the outcomes were, and just for us to use it as a piece of learning, really. And so Appendix B shares one case that's currently coming up for discussion. There is another one in the wings that will come as part of the next update. So the mentioned in Appendix B is around ill health retirement, and the individual is disputing the level of pension awarded upon being ill health retired. We have checked this as part of our first stage, and we're confident that the level of award is accurate. So, but it will now go into stage 2, and panel will determine the outcome of that. What I would say is, and just building on the point we made earlier, looking for volunteers to be trained up in this sort of stuff, given that Steve, you remember, as is Val, as is Councillor Brown, it would be good to get more members trained up to sit on an IDRP panel, and that's part of the plan for the year ahead. The panels are all supported by a trained lawyer, so and they are independently sort of reviewed in terms of the stage 1 decision, and stage 2 is decided at that panel. So just really to share the Welsh Gov circular for information, and to share with you where we're at in terms of pensions disputes, and just use that as a piece of learning, I guess. So any comments, observations, gratefully received.
Yes.
And any volunteers for the IDRP panel?
Yeah, this panel, yes, it's yes. I've sat on many, same as well as, yes, and it's yes, the amount of paperwork. I can't remember how much the last one. I think we had loads and loads, didn't we? Yeah, with files. We were days to go through it, so it's yes, it's very technical. I'm glad the 2 stages are staying, because I think it's much better. 100%. So yeah.
Councillor Brown.
Who's that now?
Councillor Brown was indicated.
Oh, Councillor Brown, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the idea of a 2, even if you can just have 1 stage, I think it's far better to have 2 stages, really. I noticed on some of the letters it mentioned the money and pensions service, as a way that people could ask for advice. I had a look on this website. Is it a free service? It seemed to imply that it was, and if it is, I just wondered whether it was worthwhile saying in the letters that it was a free presumably government service.
It's a standard letter, yes, yeah. I thought it was a standard letter, yes. Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah.
That's a standard letter, yeah. I thought it was, yeah. Yeah.
It's like at the end of stage 1 letter, and it comes up a number of times in this document.
But every person who puts the thing has representation from the unions as well, so they're well adverse from the unions with what they're going to do with everything. So till you set the panels, the Council Brown, you don't see what it's like. Yeah, it's very much so.
I just thought, Chair, that it might be helpful if it is a free service to actually say that, because that might encourage people to use it more. That's all.
Well, it's out of our control, isn't it? If it's the standard data from the Pensions Board, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with us, no.
Yeah, this is provided by Welsh Government.
Yes.
Stock collector.
Oh, is
Yeah. No, I thought it had to do with us. Yeah.
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 Oh, so you can't alter it then?
No.
No. Okay. Thanks.
Thought I was right. Anybody else got any questions on it? The unions, you happy with this? Yeah.
Yes, happy.
Yeah, perfectly happy, thanks.
Yeah. I'm glad stage 2 was kept in, because I think that's the safeguard for everybody. I think personally, anyway, 100%. So, yeah. Okay, thank you ever so much. We go on to item 10 on 85. This is going to be the one, I think.
It is, okay.
Yes.
So I'm just going to log into my system. And right, share my screen. One moment. Okay, can you all see my screen? There's a PowerPoint slide titled "Pensions Remedy and Immediate Detriment."
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'd like to do is just take you through where we are today, in terms of the remedy for the High Court's judgment on age discrimination, and what this means for us as a service. And it's good that we've got Ian Traylor on the call as well, because this will bring to life some of the discussions we've had this morning. So I'm going to move through to the next slide. I'm just going to check. Can everyone see that the slide has changed?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay. So
Excuse me, I'm not getting anything at all, but that's fine. I'm happy listening. Okay.
Is everyone else? Can everyone else see the slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it's.
It must be the Monmouth there, Val. It must be.
I think it's probably the screen view that Councillor Smith is using.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'll talk, because what I'm going to do is take you through a journey, and hopefully, Councillor Smith, this will be clear. But do stop me as I pause to move on to the next slide if there's anything I've said that you don't understand.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So just to start at the beginning, as we've alluded to earlier today, back in 2011, Lord Hutton's review of the pensions landscape from a public service perspective suggested some amends, so some changes to pensions going forward. The reforms included things like restricting final salary schemes, extending retirement ages, and introducing career average schemes. In 2015, these schemes were all reformed and defined benefits on a career average basis and were introduced, and normal retirement ages were extended. The regulations were also amended to make this come into force, and as part of that arrangement, the protection that was provided to people who were at a particular age, so normal pension age of 55 by 31st of March 2022, the category of this group of staff were given something called protection and through a tapered arrangement. This has been the subject of a High Court judgment. So where people tapered on the basis of age, it was determined by the High Court that arrangement was basically amounted to age discrimination. In 2018, this was challenged in the Court of Appeal, and it was found that, or it was ruled that, the transitional protection that was awarded to the people in that age category was or did constitute age discrimination. So that was the judgment that we call MacLeod Sargent. So we refer to that as MacLeod Sargent. So following that judgment in 2020, so in October 2020, the government decided that it would undertake a consultation around what pensions look like going forward. And this is where you as a committee were involved in developing the services response as an employer to the consultation. The outcome of that consultation, you'll remember we talked about a range of things, including an immediate choice, that was an option, a deferred choice underpin was an option. The output of the consultation was that the deferred choice underpin was the route forward that government were going to adopt. So with that all boxed off in terms of the sort of consultation, the MacLeod Sargent outcome, I say boxed off, everyone thought it was boxed off, but in February of this year, there was a challenge in the Employment Appeal Tribunal where there was a question around, did FRAs, so fire and rescue authorities, have the necessary governance and decision-making powers to challenge the age discrimination aspect. The EAT judgment said that FRAs could not rely on something called a Schedule 22 defence, and the EAT stated that FRAs should have made a decision around implementing pensions changes on the basis of their own equality impact assessment. So the summary of that means that from a legal perspective, we are obliged to implement the changes to put right the age discrimination aspects. So I think where that then takes us is currently there is no legal basis upon which we should sit back and wait and wait for legislation in order to put those age discrimination aspects right. So that's the kind of background picture. I'm going to move into the remedy aspect, which those of you who read the consultation documents that were published, you will know that from April of next year, all protected members move into an equivalent scheme to the 2015 fire pension scheme if they wish to continue service. And then the government has stated by October 23, everything should have been fixed, so everything should have been put right, so that those who should have stayed essentially in their 1992 scheme would have access to the 1992 scheme. So as you can imagine, and as we've alluded to throughout this morning, there's quite a lot of work heading down the tracks. And just to give you a flavour of the timeline of events, which is the next slide, we're looking at almost three sort of categories. First off is the immediate term. So given the government's consultation on the remedy, what does that look like? So we've got cases that are pretty much, we need to resolve now. There's no legislation because government haven't been able to put the legislation in place in order for us to deal with the immediate cases. Ian mentioned earlier we've got no software, or at least not at the moment. I know the software houses are working at the software, but we've got no confirmed time frame for that yet. The policy decisions around how do you deal with additional contributions, what happens if there's a pension sharing order on an individual's pension history, how do you cope with those in the light of remedy, though that detail has not yet been developed. But what we do have, which is the very last bullet point under immediate term, is we've got some informal guidance that's recently been issued that we can work with. And I'll say a bit more about that in a sec. From April of next year, we know that the 2015 scheme will be where most of our members will sit. So from April 22, people will be pushed into the 2015 scheme. If they're not, they're already. And the aim is Treasury and Home Office working together with HMRC to develop primary and secondary legislation. And we know that's not a quick fix, and it's not something that's done quickly, but the aim is to have all of that in place by April 22. Government has said by October 23 this all should be boxed off, and everything that should have happened, so people should be in their right schemes, we should have done all the conversions, and people will be in the right place by the end of 2023. So you can see what we're looking at, a 2-year hence time frame to be in the right place. I'll move on. I've already alluded to some of the complexity involved in this, and some of the questions that we've been discussing with HMRC, Home Office, NFCC forums, Ian, myself and our teams. So how do we do some of this stuff to first of all resolve any immediate cases, but how then will government, and a lot of this will fall to government direction, policy and legislation, put the tax right. So tell us how we calculate the tax, how do we work out pension growth, how do we work out where there should have been higher contributions from the members, what do we do in those scenarios. So it's quite a complex picture, and you know, I think where we will head in a minute is we've got some immediate cases whereby people have been telling us they want to retire, but we haven't got the policy, the legislation in place. So where do we go from here? So the people who can retire now, these are people that we're calling our immediate detriment cases. Lots of FRSs across the UK are now moving to implement immediate detriment, but what this means is they're moving without having the relevant legislation in place. And you can see from that slide the complexity around immediate detriment. So all of those things that I just mentioned, how to work out interest, what if there's a contribution holiday in play, what if somebody's had a pension sharing order or purchased added pension, how do we look at pensions growth, how does annual allowance fit in all of this? We know that there's something called an authorised payment charge, where you know, if a lump sum is paid and an employee or former member picks back up a role in a fire and rescue service, that could elicit an authorised payment charge. HMRC are very keen on reclaiming those unauthorised payment charges back. So, you know, the sort of the next steps are going to be quite complex. In terms of processes, what data do we need? What's our own capacity, both from an internal resourcing perspective, systems, Ian's mentioned that, data, and what about the members? So if they make a decision, on what basis are they making a decision? At the moment, the 92 scheme is still technically in play for everyone, and you know, the 2015 scheme is now in play for most people, but the 92 scheme is now an option. So how do we develop two different pensions benefit statements whereby a member can make the best choice? So that you can see that the picture is extremely complex. One of the things that some FRSs are doing is putting in play a member waiver. So where people are categorised under that immediate detriment group, what that means essentially is if they put their notice in today, they would expect from us a pensions estimate statement based on the scheme that they're currently now in, versus a further pensions estimate statement based on the what if scenario. So if they chose to have the best of the best, then in possibly most cases the 92 scheme would be the best, which is the scheme that they've been transitioned out of. So what we are looking at, and we're working with other FRSs on this, is if we can get agreement to proceeding with immediate detriment in advance of full remedy, what does that then look like? So some form of member waiver is what other FRSs have done. So they've basically got the prospective retiree to sign to say, you know, I understand that I'm taking this deal without the relevant legislative aspects in play. And I understand that if the tax has been calculated incorrectly, then there would be an adjustment to be had. So that's the sort of process arrangements and legal arrangements that we're looking at the moment. In terms of immediate detriment then, one of the things that we're looking to do is to put paper to our fire authority on the 19th of July. That paper will seek to ask members to support and move forward with processing immediate detriment cases. The challenges around moving forward with immediate detriment are all the things I've just said, so we would be moving forward without legislation in place. However, some of the risks with not moving forward are probably greater. So we know that rep bodies, so trade unions, are watching to see what FRSs are doing in terms of, are they waiting for legislation? Well, there is no reason to wait for legislation because the EAT has told us there's no reason to sit back. And if we wait for legislation, is that likely to be in by April 22? Potentially yes. But we know that legislation has to be passed through Parliament, and what does that schedule look like, and is that actually going to come into force by April 22? So I think where we're at is what I've just described earlier, which is moving some of our internal pension resource within our current resourcing arrangement to focus on immediate detriment cases and to help us shape the full remedy exercise. That does mean, as I said, we would be moving forward without legislation, but what has been helpful is the Home Office and LGA have recently issued some informal guidance. The informal guidance does say that where there's complexity in the individual member's history, then we should avoid processing those cases. But it does provide a framework that's sufficient for us to process and proceed. Where someone's transferred a pension or purchased added pension, where there's a divorce or a financial separation order, where there's a pension holiday, or where somebody has overpaid contributions, and those that are described as fully protected, so they're still in their 92 scheme, those are all categories that are excluded from moving forward with immediate detriment. So the informal guidance is quite helpful in that it's saying straightforward cases, yes, you can process those, but if there's added complexity, then you may want to exclude those and put those into the next round, which is the full remedy exercise. So what I have done is I've put the remedy guidance, so the immediate detriment guidance is in your pack. And you will see that from pages 107, I believe, no, actually, hang on, page 101, and page 130. So 101 is the LGA informal immediate detriment guidance, and 130 is the Home Office immediate detriment guidance. So where we're at internally is that there's no reason to sit back and not move to implement immediate detriment. We have now got informal guidance that will help us. We know the categories of complexity that we should avoid, but what we do need to do is work with our rep bodies, so our trade unions and our pensions administrator on next steps. So next steps, as I've described, are wanted to share that journey with you today. We'll put the paper to the Fire Authority in July, which will make the recommendation that we proceed with immediate detriment cases and alert members of the bigger remedy exercise that will take place over the next couple of years. But also for us then to start communicating to members that we will do this and we'll want to work with our relevant stakeholders in order to shape almost our own policy decisions, but on the back of the guidance that we've received from Home Office and LGA. And that will allow us to provide people who tell us they're retiring now with the two pensions benefit statements or retirement statements. And they will make their choice, and we know that those who make a choice either way, we will have to revisit in the fullness of time as part of the full remedy. So that's where we're at. I guess probably I should pause there and just take any observations, any questions or comments. And perhaps if Ian has got any particular thoughts to add as well, because RCT have got a huge role to play in this, as well as our own internal pensions expertise.
Well, can I say this is quite complicated? It's not a quick fix, and I think the way you were going about it is the right way to bring a paper to the authority for a way forward. You know, government are dragging their feet. I think they'll be dragging their feet not just now for quite a long time on pensions, and they need to get their act together. So I think the way forward is this. You know, we can't answer loads of questions now because it's impossible to answer questions on this. Yeah. So I think yes, paper to Fire Authority and forward definitely. Okay. Ian, do you agree with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think Chair is a difficult position to be in, and as I said, Alison and myself have had a number of discussions on it, and it's clearly going to take some work to put right, but it's right that we put things right as well, you know. So we have to recognise that, and this clearly sets out a sort of a comprehensive sort of map and I guess an issues map that we need to address as we're rectifying this and putting things right. But it's certainly going to be a challenge for us all, but clearly the right thing to do.
Are the unions? What the unions' thoughts on this?
Yeah, obviously from a rep body perspective, first off, great presentation, Ali Reid. I think you covered excellent the complex landscape that's come. I think obviously from a union's perspective, we want our members to be able to get the right pension that they've paid into as soon as possible. Totally understand why you're approaching the big task in the way that you are. But obviously, as soon as the guidance covering other members, such as those who've recently retired, and that comes out, we would look for a speedy resolution.
Yeah, I agree there, Rich. Yes. Yeah. Are the unions? Any other union officer wants to speak on it?
Well, Chair, it's just a case of I think due to the complexity of treading very, very carefully and making sure that everything is safeguarded, and being interim without legislation is a case of just watch your backs all the time through the procedure.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Complexity a bit, as you say, with government dragging their feet and so on and so forth. It's so easy for them to turn around as an afterthought and say, well, you got it wrong.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah. Yeah, I can see Councillor Brown have had a hand up, anticipating what I can see she's wants to speak, so I'll bring Councillor Brown in, yeah?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think obviously it's the only thing that can be done in the circumstances, and it is incredibly complex. Because of the date of the 19th of July in terms of notification, I assume that people who are thinking of retiring very shortly are better to get that notice in so that they are within the immediate detriment group. And I just wondered whether they were being notified by the fire authority or by the unions about this this particular date. You know, if you're sort of imminently thinking of retiring, and I don't know whether, I think the normal retirement age, I think, is possibly, I might be wrong, is 55, but presumably officers work beyond that time. So I suppose it's, are we thinking of sort of notifying the people who could retire but aren't necessarily, have not necessarily given notice that they are in view of the deadline? Thank you.
Don't think we're allowed to do that, do we?
No, what we will, yeah. So I think what we will do is put some comms out to say that you know, we're working with stakeholders such as our trade unions and our administrator to support, and you know, we will work within the immediate detriment guidance. But it's up to member choice.
The members themselves, yes. Yeah, it's not up to us as an employee to tell them what they've got to do. It's them. Because we can get it stick in for saying what we said or whatever. But remember, it's just me around from a couple of years ago.
I think it was just a question of the date, you know, that people could get within the scheme if they're given that particular notice by the 19th of July. That was all. Okay.
Well, it's just a fire authority meeting, yeah. Yeah,
it is a difficult one in terms of the date. And also the guidance has only just been received. So, you know, we can't, part of our defence will be that we've acted on the guidance and scheduled it for the next appropriate fire authority. Different FRSs are applying it at different dates, so there's not a standard effective date. It's just whenever your fire authority makes a decision. And of course we invite 3 months notice. So technically it'll be anyone retiring from October.
Exactly. I'm quite happy that the unions are on agreement with this, because if they weren't in agreement, I think we've got a realistic wicket that the unions are on board with this one, and that's what we've got to look after. It's not our money, it's their money, and we've got to make sure everything is okay for them, I totally agree with that one, Anybody else will bring anything on that now? No?
Obviously, the one thing to bear in mind is that the Fire Brigades Union aren't represented here today.
I know, yes.
But you're more likely to get pushed back from there, really. But I know they will probably go along the same lines as what I said, I think.
Yeah, I think so, Rich, yes, I totally agree, yeah.
Just to close that off, Rich, I have spoken to the FBU informally, and they are very much as you described, you know, they want to see some movement and are comfortable that, you know, we're moving in this order. Yeah,
and we can't move any quicker. And we can't move it. That's the fact of life. Okay, thank you ever so much for that, Alison. Some big work ahead on that one.
Yes.
So we're going to item 11 on page 87.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this one is relatively straightforward. This is a new item that we've added to the agenda. I was just conscious that there are a number of publications floating around regularly, and I thought as part of our own enhanced knowledge, skills and understanding, it would be good to bring them as part of the papers. So what you have here is the Fire Pensions Bulletin that's issued by local government. And the other two documents are the ones that I just referred to, which are the informal guidance notes from LGA and Home Office. So it'll be quite useful, I think, for us as we go forward as a committee to have this information. I know it's easily accessible on LGA websites, but if you've got it in your pack, it's easy. It's an easier read, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, any sort of observations on usefulness or anything else, then happy to take them.
Yeah, I get these bulletins sent up by email to me
Up to
anyway.
you.
Yes, I get,
Okay.
yes, yeah. And I was told once that they know that if you haven't clicked on to read the link, so I make sure I read the links, because apparently they go back to see if you haven't read as a chair. Yeah, that's what I've been told. I forget who I think Sally told me that they know that if you just deleted them or whatever. So I do read these definitely, and I save them on email as well. Yeah. Any questions on that, everybody? No. Right, brilliant. Thank you ever so much. So we go to item 12.139, training sessions for members.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I'd like to introduce Lisa Mullen, who's in our Finance Directorate. She's going to take us through the pension funding mechanism. So a bit of a change in terms of training session this afternoon, but all part of building our knowledge, skills and understanding. So Lisa, are you ready to go?
I am. Okay. So, as far as the role of finance in pensions is concerned, the administration is undertaken by our pensions team that sit in HR. Any financing of pensions or statutory financial reporting is undertaken by the finance team. So HR really play a pivotal role in terms of feeding the information into RCT, so that RCT as our pension administrators can collate the data and give it back to us at the end of the financial year, so we can include that in our statutory reporting. Because we've got two financial things going on as far as the financing mechanisms or pensions and finance are concerned, and that is the annual firefighter pension fund, and also then the reporting of pensions. So this will mostly concentrate on the firefighters pension fund. So the firefighters pension fund is one fund, and it includes all schemes. So you've got the 92, 2007, 2015 retained modified schemes and anything and everything else in between. So it's one fund. The important thing to remember about the fund is it's a ring-fenced fund. We have to report it separately. There can't be any, I want to think of a different word from infection. There can't be any infection from the revenue budget, but there can't be any cross-pollination. All the transactions are stipulated by regulations, and it has to be treated as an account within our accounts. And this is largely because it's underwritten by Welsh Government. I don't know if members know anything about the pension fund, the firefighters pension fund, but any shortfalls on it are funded through Welsh Government annually. So it's an unfunded pension fund, which means that any revenue streams are not invested to make returns, which is in contrast with schemes like the local government scheme that enjoys any sort of returns on the market. And it subsidises the fund to a degree. So the regulations stipulate that the type of transactions are recorded here because it's ring-fenced. And I'll run through exactly what these are next. And because of this, the Firefighter Pension Fund is auditable annually through the Audit Wales regime. And it's even got its own separate materiality level of £500,000. I'm not sure that means anything to anybody, but it is subject to scrutiny to make sure that we are ring-fencing and treating all transactions correctly. So in a nutshell, the firefighter pension fund is a cash account. It's settled annually and at the end of each financial year. And it's largely it is cost neutral, but there are some cost burdens attributable to the service's revenue budget. And I'll describe what they are a little bit later. All right? Any questions anybody wants to ask, feel free. It'll save just the toning on of my voice. So I'm going to try and share what I've got here. I've got some slides just to talk through. I'm hoping you can see this.
Oh, here we are.
Yeah. Can I make that? You can't make that bigger, it is what it is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm talking about the fund being ring-fenced and regulations stipulating the type of transactions that go through the fund. So these are the types of things that come in and go out of the firefighter pension fund account. So we've got employer contributions, employee contributions, and they are both coming in from the payroll that's run by the service. For the fund, that is income. For the service, that is cost. There is a mirroring that goes on between the service revenue budget and the firefighter pension fund. So we pour into the fund from the revenue budget by way of employer and employee contributions. We also then have income from transfers in, and that's not just from other fire funds. People from all walks of life that join the service can transfer in cash equivalent transfer values. And we've also, the service, from the service budget, we calculate annually a charge to the revenue budget, what is an income for the firefighter pension fund, for ill health retirements. And these are only done after independent medical examiner as deemed somebody unfit for work, and that takes place in 2 tiers, which isn't really part of this presentation, but some income from the ill health retirements there. So that's, by and large, all the income that we have coming into the fund. And then expenditure going out. We have the pension lump sums, otherwise known as commutations. We have the monthly pension payroll that's run for us by RCT, or pension administrators. And we also have transfers out, or transfers out, as I've got there. Transfers, yeah, definitely. So we've got incoming into the fund, money coming in. We've got outgoing of the fund, which is money going out. And the difference between the cash in and the cash out is what we either pay to or receive from Welsh Government. And that's otherwise known as a top-up grant. I'm sure everybody on the in the local pension board has heard of that. So, to the service, the running of the pension fund, other than in ill health retirements and injuries, it is cost neutral. So in terms of the timelines with these sorts of transactions, so you can get a feel for the process that we undergo, there's a financial year timeline, and finance will put together a forecast of what the pension position is going to be. So we'll try and extrapolate, is that the word I'm looking for? Extrapolate our pension costs and our pension income, and we tend to do that around November, December time. So we do that for the year ahead, the financial year ahead. And then we get 80% of the shortfall, and it's usually a shortfall because, let's face it, pension costs are increasing. We get 80% of the grant in August, which to me is a little odd because it's 5 months after the financial year has started, and in terms of cash flow does put us on a little bit of a back foot, especially if retirements are outstripping what we have in our workforce planning model. The last few years, we've managed to negotiate with Welsh Government, and thankfully so, getting the pension grant in April. That does help us tremendously because the costs there can be quite large. So we travel through the year, and as described earlier, lots of the transactions going into the firefighter pension fund are generated through the monthly payroll. So it's through our employee and employer contributions going in, pouring into this fund, and then pensioners drawing back out. So we get to March, and then we tally up the difference then between cash in and cash out, as described. We have to publish this, the Firefighter Pension Fund, in the annual statement of accounts. If anybody's interested, it's on page 86 for the last financial year. And it does describe for this year that we were short of the incomings and outgoings of cash of just short of 14 million. So there's some big figures there in terms of the funding from the Welsh Government for the pension fund. The way we do that, the way we forecast, we keep communicating with Welsh Government. They have things called FPF returns, and what they do is they say what we forecast in for the next 3 financial years, so that they can prepare their own financial position to fund us, because we are one of 3 fire and rescue services in Wales, and as you can see, the figures are quite large. This is quite a busy slide. Please don't be overwhelmed, but basically it shows the income coming in. So everything in green is income from the various schemes. Remember, this is one fund for multiple schemes. And then we've got the expenditure at the bottom. And then there at row 11 is what we are short of. 13,761,000, and that's what will be funded to us by Welsh Government. We would have already have had 80% of that, or 80% of an estimate for the year, and then what happens if that 80% is less than the actual figure, we get that given to us the following year with the next 80% grant. So there's 2 things. There's one annual pension grant, or top-up grant, but there's 2 things happening with that grant. That's 80% of the year ahead is coming to us, and also the difference in the year that just closed. So they're either taking it off or they're giving it to us, the under or over cash position. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah, I understand it.
Yeah, good. So just for completeness, showed you what transactions come in and out, showed you the timeline, showed you the mechanism, which is the FPF returns that we feed back to Welsh Government at 2 points in the year, really. And it culminates in the Firefighter Pension Fund account that we publish in the annual statement of accounts. You've got 2 years there for 2019 and 2021. You can see it's in columnar format. Yeah, so this is the year that's just closed, this 1 year. And again, it just presents information in a different way, showing all the income in. So 13.5 million with transfers in is 14 million. And then pension costs payable coming to just short, 27.5 million. So again, we've got that £13 million deficit there. Any questions?
No.
No? Okay, so the relationship between Firefighter Pension Fund and the revenue budget, I've touched on it. I've said that the Firefighter Pension Fund is cost neutral because contributions coming in as income are used to pay out to pensioners. But there is a difference, as we know, and that is paid through a top-up grant from Welsh Government. But there are extra bits that are coded to the revenue budget and are a cost to the revenue budget and do take a part of our budget setting with local authorities. And you can see there, this slide shows the revenue budget here, and how the employer contributions are a cost to the revenue budget, but an income to the firefighter pension fund, and also again for the firefighter for the ill health retirement costs as well. So that's just showing you the relationship between the revenue budget and the firefighter pension fund. I'm sure there was something else I was supposed to say here. I can't remember what it is. So there's this mirroring that goes on. That probably shows it a little bit better. So in the revenue budget, as I mentioned, ill health retirements are calculated annually. There's years where there's none. It depends what has happened. And we calculate them annually, and there is a charge to the revenue budget, and we tend to spread the cost of them over 3 years. Injury benefits or injury charges, they are coded directly to the revenue budget, so they don't touch the firefighter pension fund account at all, because these are payable whether a firefighter is in the scheme or not. And those are the two charges that hit the revenue budget. And that's basically it, unless there's any questions.
I got 21 for you. No, yeah, I'm joking. Yeah. I couldn't resist that. No, thanks ever so much, Liz. That's great. It's you know, you see it in perspective. You hear about money going in, money going out. See it actually on paper, to see how much you get from Welsh Government as well. This is unbelievable, like, you know.
Every year, I mean, I've been here 13 years, and that top-up grant has gotten bigger.
Yeah.
It's gotten bigger, yeah. Because our old scheme members that make the biggest contributions are retiring. There's less than in 1992 scheme. And of course, they're the biggest drawers then from the fund. So, yeah, there is that trend that we do identify. We try and keep Welsh Government abreast of those changes as much as we possibly can. Yeah, but who knows, the future will bring.
The one thing to note, Lisa mentioned about the fact that the last couple of years we've had that top-up grant earlier in the year.
Yeah.
But that's always done every year through negotiation, because the guidance and the procedures say that top-up grant is paid in August, so they could easily revert back to that. It's just, you know, through Lisa's good negotiation with the Welsh Government that we managed to get that cash inflow in earlier in the year to support us to make that even spread of the cash flow across the year, and not trying to balance it up before we've even got the money in.
Exactly.
I mean, even though it's a separate ring-fenced account, all our cash is managed through service bank accounts. And if we hadn't have had that grant in April, we would have had to have borrowed as a service. So and there's a financing cost for that, isn't there? So to be fair to Welsh Government, they're very good in stepping forward and helping us out again this year. Yeah, but they're going to pay it eventually. We're just pushing the date forward.
And the other thing to point out is that we don't keep a separate bank account for the fund.
No, exactly. Yeah.
We just keep it in with the rest of our cash balances.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's worth having a word with the Minister as well when the Chair and I meet with the Minister to say about this, because I think that, yes. It
would be great if they would give it to me. I mean, because you'd almost subsidising Welsh Government for the first 5 months.
Yeah.
And I can't really see a logic for that. Albeit they did ask us all this year, North and Mid and West, whether we'd like to, what do we think about the date the grant is paid. And I think one of us went back and said we were happy with the August payment, which is a bit strange for a finance person to say. Always have money in the pocket rather than...
Yeah, I would have thought. I would like the beginning. Yes, yeah.
Councillor indicated.
Val, you want to speak? Val? You there?
Please.
Yeah.
See your job. Please, that last little bit about ill health retirement and then the injury not in the pension fund, particularly an injury, there will be a payment that goes towards a pension, presumably, or is it one payment that comes out of the general finances of the authority?
With the ill health, it's one charge that we spread over 3 years. We try and smooth the charge in the revenue budget rather than have all these peaks and bumps, because 1 year you could have 10 ill health retirements, although I've never known 10, and another year you could have none. So we try and smooth it out. So we take an average of the 3 years for that one charge that hits the revenue budget. So that one charge would hit 3 years worth of revenue budget. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one charge divided by 3 over 3 financial years. Yeah. That's the ill health charges. With the injury benefits, that is tied to somebody finishing on ill health and with injury, and they do receive an enhanced pension as a result.
It's so okay, that what you said, that clarifies it fine, because I've not, in my mind, tied it to retirement. I've got injury with him. That's fine, thank you. That's great. It's clear.
Great, thank you, Val.
Yes,
anybody
it's fine.
No? Well, thank you ever so much for that. It is. I think so. When we go to like full 540 meeting, have something like that be shown there about the amount of money going in and going out. So I think that'd be good for other members to look at as well. You don't have to come and give a presentation. You can just a slide to show that what it's all about. Yeah.
Just pension fund account there. You touch up to vote on.
Yeah,
I think so. I think all members then be aware of what's going in and what's going out. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
We're on item 13. I can never get this right, even when I'm in a council meeting. I get a forward work programme. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Bye bye.
So on the next meeting's agenda in October, we've got the annual benefit statements, which Ian will provide for us. KPIs, Ian again. An update on the cloud, so that might be helpful given what I've just shared. Scheme advisory board updates, standard item applications, and then the training session. And then the last meeting of the year, we've got KPIs, McLeod, and the training session, but I'm sure there's probably more to be added to that one.
Yeah, that's okay, yeah. I'm happy with that. Okay, thank you ever so much, members and everybody. I can't say have a safe journey home because you're all in the houses. It's outside of when you're going to safe journey home now. So thank you ever so much for coming, and we'll see you all on the next Fire Authority meeting in July. Thank you ever so much, Jeff. Okay?
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.